Hello, Francesco.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and thank you so much for having this moment with me on my YouTube channel.
No, thank you.
So we are here at the IRCAM, and you're doing a project here right now, and so it's a fantastic studio, and you were showing me all the techniques, and this project sounds amazing, and we're going to talk about many things today. The reason we met is because you're this year the godfather of the Atelier du Violoncelle in Paris, and so this is the opportunity to have an exchange about your life, your inspirations, your mentors, and everything. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to ask you many questions today.
Yeah, thank you. Same for me. It's a nice chance to be in Paris, like both for the IRCAM project that happens with a few sessions of work. So I'm coming basically every month now, also for les ateliers du violoncelle, so it's génial.
Génial. Great. So, Francesco, my first question would be to know how you started the cello and how you discovered music.
You know, it was a family inspiration from my parents. So just their intention. So no one is really musician in the previous generation of my family, but they are all music lovers. There is a lot of love for music, and my parents, they were art historians, so they were more into visual arts. So, and but they wanted me to love music. This was the intention, no? So they wanted me to try some instrument just for the love of music, not for a career, not for the profession. Just to make me love music, to be sure that as an adult I would love music as much as they did. So they saw me, I think I was singing in a choir first in school, like as a, let's say 7 years old, 8 years old. And apparently I was very enthusiastic to sing. This is what they say. And so they thought maybe I could try the conservatoire. In Italy is a different system than France at the time. I'm speaking about the 80s, right? 80, 82, 83. And you could start directly in the conservatory and study from beginning to the end, let's say 10 years with the same teacher. It was not like it is in France or like it is now. The system is divided now. But at the time you could start as a 9-10 years old until you are 20 and finish your studies in the same institution with the same teacher.
Wow.
So why not trying, and let's see what could be his favorite instrument, they thought. So I was just, probably I didn't know what I was saying, but I remember I choose French horn and double bass. This was my idea. I don't know why, really. I don't remember trying out instruments or anything. I just a lot of concerts. I went to the theater pretty regularly with them since when I was 3 years old, and sleep a lot, but listen also. And then double bass and French horn. So French horn, maybe there was no teacher. I don't know, no position or no possibility. But double bass, they told me. Remember, we are in 83, so they told me, you don't start as a double bass when you are 10 years old, impossible. You start from the cello, and then maybe when you grow in 2 years, you can move to the double bass. So I started the cello just to move to double bass. This was my project. And actually, the start was a bit traumatic, because the first teacher, in that time, there was a great old teacher in the conservatoire. His name was Franco Rossi, and he was the cellist of the legendary Quartetto Italiano. So really inspirational, great musician. So I had the feeling that he was the one I wanted to meet, but he was retiring in just 1 year. So he told me, I wish, but I cannot, because next year I will be. So you go to this other teacher. And the other teacher actually was not a very inspiring teacher. So I was very shy, and probably I was very shy with my movements, with my gestures. So in the first months it was very not easy to understand. each other, and yeah, he was like pushing me, and I was always more tense. And so I remember that after 6 months he said that I was not so gifted for the cello, I should play the oboe. Yeah, very weird. Today I remember because it's important for me to understand that you have to give time to the young learning an instrument, because it's a new thing in your body, you know. And so the oboe I tried, but I really hated. So I thought, no, better to learn this cello. And in 1 year I started. No, but now I was a bit, you know, disappointed by this teacher. And so after 2 years I was already in the right direction. And he liked me then, but I was still a bit sad with these first steps. So there was another teacher coming from outside that was named supposedly very, very good. His name was Andrea Nannoni, and everybody spoke very highly of him. So yeah, it was difficult, but my parents made sure that I would change the class, you know, and go to this new teacher. And this was really like the click. So I was 11, 12 at that time, so still in the very early. But yes, this new teacher was exactly encouraging, quiet, just very healthy, very good. He was a student of Andre Navarra, so he had very good bow school for what I think still today. You know, a lot of movements with a lot of subject, and but in a very calm and not dramatic, just warm, you know, warm heart. So this made me really go in a kind of stable, regular growth. And he was very open to my development as a musician. So because I had this many interests in intellectual interest since always, I think, probably from the family, and so yeah, immediately the cello was also a part of it, was growing, regular repertoire and regular studies, but also a lot of different interests, like very soon I was curious about Baroque playing, which in the 80s in Italy was not at all fashionable. No, really. I will tell you more later.
In the 80s it was...
In the 80s it was still very like, no, you don't play Bach like you play today. You a lot of vibrato, a lot of heavy bow, and you know, big sound. So, and I was already curious. Anna Bilsma, these records, wow, incredible. And then new music slowly also started to improvise when I was 15, 16, and you know, a lot of. And my teacher was a more traditional cellist, but he was always also very, you know, encouraging a bit different repertoire. Maybe people would study, you know, I don't know, Borgia concert, I would study for sure Shostakovich or Honegger or Kodali cello sonata, or, you know, a lot of 20th century I was always, or Gabrielli Ricercari, you know, I was already looking for something not so common, like maybe Honegger before than Haydn, you know, in my studies. So it was always a little adventurous and encouraged by a great teacher, very healthy and very... So this was the 10 years, let's say, in school, and I would say the start, yes. Immediately from love of music, and in these early stages until I was maybe 16, I thought of the cello as a kind of instrument to make music, but maybe never my final direction. I thought more that one day maybe I would like to study composition and conducting. This was maybe my plan. I didn't know, but maybe I had this thing in behind, you know. And so the cello is important just to learn music, but maybe then when I'm old enough I will learn something else. And then I think there was a couple of things out of the conservatory that made me really like excited. So one was a course in Soviet Union. 89, I think. So that must have been 88. Yes, I think
went there?
87. Yes. So my parents, again, they were looking. They knew that I was also very enthusiastic with a lot of Soviet music, Shostakovich, Gubaidulina, and a lot of Russian instrumentalists, like, of course, Rostropovich and Tretiakov, Spivakov, all these incredible violinists, and Borodin Quartet. I could hear them all in Firenze, and I was just so inspired by this. It was maybe somehow this energy, this ritualistic, the Borodin Quartet. Every quartet was amazing, but when they came, it was so much intense, compared to other groups of the time. So almost religious, almost strong, Yeah, a lot of also Rimsky-Korsakov was another passion of mine. I don't, so a lot of Russian literature for sure, Tolstoy and Gogol and all Bulgakov. So I was very enthusiastic with Russia, and they found this course in St. Petersburg Conservatory for Italy, Soviet Union Friendship Association. So they were looking if it was a serious project, and apparently yes. So they sent me for 1 month or a little more, maybe 40 days in the summer, to this conservatory. And basically I had a lesson every day, I think, with this teacher who didn't speak any other language than Russian. But, a lot of singing, a lot of show, and a lot of, this communication that sometimes the Russian people can have, and also my enthusiasm. And I was out of this academy of the Florence Conservatory that was nice, but also a bit, narrow-minded. That, my teacher was great, but then, other than that, Baroque, no, contemporary, no, so orchestra very bad, chamber music terrible. So my class was great, but the rest was not so. And so there I felt so inspired, and I realized I was also, I could play good, because this teacher was super enthusiastic and made me play in the nice hall of the St. Petersburg Conservatory, and really supported me a lot with playing. So I went back next year, and then when I came to the normal life, I was full of enthusiasm. Really, I started practicing with a lot of dedication and enthusiasm that before I didn't. Yes, I had, but on a more abstract. Now I could feel that I could play the cello, find my voice. It was all real, somehow. So, and then also another great thing came from joining the Italian Youth Orchestra. That was probably when I was, again, 16, 17 maybe. And this teacher of mine, Nannoni, that I mentioned before, he was also connected to the other big school in Firenze. So there is conservatory is institutional. And then there is this important school called the Scuola di Fiesole. Fiesole is hill over Florence. And there is this wonderful school founded by another member from the Quartetto Italiano, Piero Farulli, the violist from this important quartet, legendary quartet in Italian music scene. And they started this school as a kind of utopistic school where you have amateur, you have normal students, but you have also very highly qualified master classes and teachers and visiting. And then you had the Italian Youth Orchestra, and they needed one cello just very quickly, someone who could jump in and play the Strauss Alpen Symphony. And so I remember very well, I was 17, no experience of orchestra because in Conservatoire was not so good, and just going inside this orchestra to play the Alpen Symphony with 100 people. The start of this symphony is like a cluster. It's very cloudy, and I remember for 2 pages I was was just listening and couldn't really understand, but I was also fascinated. And then, I at the end I stayed 3 years in this institution, and it was also fantastic because it was a lot of orchestra, but a lot of chamber music, a lot of string quartet, with amazing teachers, because there was Amadeus string quartet, Quartetto Italiano, Smetana string quartet, then Trio di Trieste, which also was a legendary Italian piano trio from the after-war 50s, 60s. And all these old teachers, they had this incredible relation to music making, like almost holy, they valued music making so much, and it was so I could breathe all this incredible, intense life for music. And I met a lot of nice colleagues, musicians, young musicians, finally a lot of string players. I could read music in the night after the long day. You could just start reading quartets, quintets, sextets. And for me, it was very clear that music, chamber music, even when you play like solo, this idea of a community, of playing with other people or resonating with something else, it became really, then I discovered then that playing together is like the best, and today it's still like this. And if I play solo repertoire, I think the same. I'm playing, there is always some harmony, some other second cello that I play with, even if I play Bach, or it's always a duo or a trio or the minimum would be just chamber music with the audience, and I think this I learned very much in this time in the Italian Youth Orchestra. This was the kick for me to realize that, and also the importance of the cello. Because at that time I started also composition studies, which was my plan A, first plan. And I was also very lucky in the teacher, because the system was not great, but some teachers were incredible. So I met Salvatore Sciarrino, who is one really leading composer of our generation still today. He's almost 80. But not only for Italian music scene, but for the world. People who has some connection with new music and knows his music, knows how important it was in today's music, because his music is sometimes very naked also, but relates to very, very much with the silence and with the sound around us. And so, like studying 5 or 6 years with him, of course it was a way to work on my music, but also to understand his music. Every lesson was improvisation. So one day we would go to the museum together, one other day we would transcribe Prelude by Debussy for orchestra, maybe one bar in 3 hours. One other day we would listen to his piece, or another day we would experiment on the cello. It was music making a very broad look to music making. It was so inspiring for me to, and of course at one point I realized, he told me after 5 or 6 years, he told me, I like, you can make nice music, you can compose nice music, but I was very fascinated by Kurtag at that time. So his music is 20 seconds long, one piece. So maybe for 1 month I would write 20 seconds, just every note was a lot of effort. And Sciarrino was pushing me to do more, just be generous with your music, is more important now. And I would bring these small pieces with, and then he would tell me, but listen, how much do you write every day? And I was like, no, only when I have the inspiration, maybe twice a week, 3 times a week. And it was, do you play every day? And I was, Yes. How much do you play? 5 hours, 6 hours, it depends with the school. I think you are more a cellist than a composer then. And I was shocked, Also, he tells me, so now maybe I have again another choice, no? Something that I would never make rationally, like I'm a cellist. Something that all of a sudden is a little clear, even if it's a shock that I'm going in a direction, And so also conducting then maybe is not more so interesting for me. And so, in my life things develops, a lot of things develops in a kind of natural way. Like I don't like very much to choose what I am and what I do, but just to dedicate myself to what inspires me, and then things should happen as a consequence, not as a kind of plan strategic, but just be open to what is in front of you. Also for younger musicians, I would strongly suggest try to focus on what brings out the best, what makes you very inspired, and happy in a sense, in a deep sense, inspired in making art, and something deep that you are not either stressed or bored or too much in the competition, but just something deep in yourself that you can develop and follow that, because there are many ways in front of us. And for me it was not so difficult in that sense, just be focused on what inspires. Like you follow a stream of water that it's a beautiful way, and you keep going and you keep discovering, and something good comes, no? Rather than lose your energy into thinking, but this guy plays much faster than I do, or he's more successful, or she's more loud, or or she wins more competition, or like focus on the music, on yourself, and be open to what comes. And maybe as a résumé, what I told until now is a good thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after the Italian Youth Orchestra times, there was the chance to start playing quartet, and yes, still as a kind of student group, but very soon it became a nice potential, something that took a lot of my enthusiasm and interest, and we started this quartet that is still today going, and a very important part of my musical life. Musical and not musical, very important part of my life. It's called the Quatuor Prometeo, Prometheus. And at the time we were looking for a name, and so this is 93. I finished my studies, and I started, of course, all the master classes and some nice meetings. But speaking about the career, the very first important things came from the quartet. In the moment it was called the first Paul Klee string quartet, but then we realized that there is already a Paul Klee string quartet, so no, unfortunately. What could be the name? And this teacher, Piero Farulli, this viola player from Quartetto Italiano, he was very powerful man. He decides the new name. I have the name. You come from Italian Youth Orchestra, Orchestra Giovanile Italiana, so you are the Oggi string quartet, Orchestra Giovanile Italiana. Oggi, 3 letters. And then, not the most beautiful sound, but we go to Japan for a tour, and people was laughing, and they said, Oggi means uncle in Japanese. It doesn't sound like the best name. And we came back and we knew that we had to find a new name, like important for a young, ambitious quartet. And so we found Prometeo. And our teacher was furious, of course, but we sometimes to fight the teachers is important. We stayed with our idea. We want to be a serious quartet. We want to find our name. And then he estimated us. he appreciated. But so the quartet was, yes, the first, probably for me it was important. I did some competitions, of course, also solo. There was one nice competition in Italy called Vittorio Veneto. I won, but I was not the kind of competition animal, like, I was more, as I told you, I was more like, I wanted to grow and make music and learn. So for me, this was ages of a lot of competitions with the quartet. So, but because it didn't feel like a competition, it felt like something as an ensemble thing that we would do. And so but of course it was important. We got prizes in Bordeaux, in Munich, ARD, and then we won the Prague Spring Prague Jaro competition. So it was, of course, huge, very, very important and very huge. And then I would always keep, master classes. Then there was a little more regularly, there was David Geringas in my school, Fiesole. And of course he was like so strict that, sometimes he would tell me, Francesco, but you won the competition with the quartet last month, and you are playing in Paris next month, and then you cannot make this mistake. You must be perfect. I was like, oh, because I was a bit spontaneous, not the elephantines. I was playing the cello, enjoying the music, but he was like, you have to be perfect if you want to be a real strong cellist. So it was very good for me, to be, because in the lesson he was really, and then in the final concert of the class he was always, you can play actually, but in class I was a bit shy again. So for me, the key for me was really to feel that everything efficient that comes from my playing comes from the inspiration and from feeling that I'm making music, that I'm speaking with the cello, that I'm not competing, not being efficient. Just I have to be in the right mindset to go, possibly to forget about the instrument, and to make music with this piece of wood. This is what made me develop as a cellist very much, to go a bit further the cello, because I was also, then the other teacher in those years was Mario Brunello, who is of course a great Italian cellist, and sometimes I was surprised. For example, one day I needed a letter from him, presentation, and he wrote something like, I wish he would do the Tchaikovsky competition, because he won the Tchaikovsky competition. So he said, I wish he would do the Tchaikovsky competition, but he's not interested. So, but I still like something like this, And I was like, he thinks that I should do this big competition. But my life was developing in another direction. Like, I was 25. I was not in this mindset of the international competition. And this idea of challenge with the cello. I was more into this growing inspiration, getting new music already. I was experimenting a bit with the contemporary music, and then sometimes the quartet lessons were just incredible. So maybe I should mention a couple of. We were traveling a lot to Paris in those years for Pro Quartet Academy, and there we would change every month the teacher. So. Alban Berg String Quartet, or a lot of different teachers in that moment, and for me a couple were just so crucial. A lot of them memorable, but a couple of lessons with Kurtag, that was one of my heroes, then proved to be such an intense, and this music, like he would speak about Beethoven like he did write the piece. He really speak about every note like with incredible insight. And the other great teacher that I always mention, because for me was a huge inspiration, was Rainer Schmidt, who is the second violin of the Hagen Quartet. And Rainer, of course, is a well-known today super established chamber music teacher. But at the time, he was also younger and not so much of a known name. But when I did the first lessons with my quartet for playing for him in Paris, I remember à la Cité des Arts, au Marais, it was just a big shift in my vision of music. Now, I remember we played a big adagio from Beethoven, this 1-3-2 A minor quartet. There is this middle movement, which who knows. It's a kind of slow chorale. And in the third time that the chorale comes, there is huge crescendos and variations, counterpoint, and it's really a lot like long crescendos. And we play this adagio for him, the first meeting, and we give everything we have. We wanted really to share all these emotions. And at the end of the lesson, and also our school was a bit this intensity, this, and we feel this music a lot, so we would just, and he was listening, and then we finish, and he's like, oh, bravi, good. And then nothing more, and we come from Italy to play to Paris for you, what's more? And he's like, no, but it's really nice, beautiful, bravi. Do you have maybe some criticism, that constructive, something that we can, and he's thinking a lot, and then he says, almost in between himself, he says, yes, I wonder if you have to do these crescendos, and we are like, yes, it's written, we are very exact, and it's 8 bars crescendo. And yes, of course. No, but why you do those, and why don't you let them happen? Just, they should happen, and you can follow them. And we are a bit shocked, again, this thing maybe comes in the right moment of our lives, no? Because if you're not strong and someone tells you this, and what does it mean, really? But if you are in the moment, you really care for music and you work every day on details and things, but then someone tells you this shift, you are in front of the music, or you are listening to the music when you play, and then we knew that there was something beautiful in this lesson, this meeting, something, we came out of the lesson that something very deep happened, we don't know what, and we kept going every time we could to play for him, and every time was a lot of questions, a lot of, but I think the point was this lesson in listening a lot, it was never do this, or there is this solution, and then do this and you play better, but it was always how to make a chord, and it was just listen to the chord and listen how you can balance, and it's not right or wrong, it's just you make your own sound. And this also, yes, was, for example, for me, was super inspiration, and again, it made very much sense for what I was looking for, always about this occasion to grow and to discover more, rather than career in terms of, again, it's career as a consequence of searching something, and something happens because you are passionate about what you are looking for. And yes, I think so. Probably a lot of things happen like this, from nice meetings and great music making, and then concerts happen because there is a common vision or some resonance. Also the same happens sometimes with organizers or with people that organize this project, that there is a connection that is deeper to what you can sell. I can sell my programs, yes, but I'm more happy if I can share these deeper things in music, and it can resonate with other people, and then it makes a more interesting thing than just one concert after the other, you know, for me. It's the same thing, but you can watch it from, it's a bit like we said about the crescendo. It can be, it's the same, but something that happens or something that you push constantly. I think it's a very crucial difference, because we treat something that is very about, very delicate, very fragile, and also very, something that is, I don't know, maybe some people think that you can live without music, you know, it's not necessary compared to health system or, you know, but I think we all know that it's necessary for something that we cannot even define, you know. So I think our development as artists, and I mean also as a career, it should happen in coherence with this kind of search, you know. So it's a lot about human connections, but connection, again, it can be brutal, like I make connections so that I can sell my stuff, or it means that you love other people and you are interested to know what they think. So for me, also new music, now this is a chapter that is important. We are in IRCAM, so it makes sense. And also new music is also with the same kind of start. I mean, after all, of course, I'm interested in new sounds and that, but also I like to have the possibility to create something with a living composer, basically. And also that is a crucial dialogue. We do it all the time with dead composers. I mean, but when I play Schumann, I cannot just play his music. I feel that I want to understand his personality, and I'm so, you know, he's my best friend, you know. To name a composer that touches me a lot, you know, deeply, if I play his music is because I feel that I can reach to this troubled but super sensitive personality, you know. And I look for that in every bar, you know. And so to make new music, basically for me is the same kind of a chance to connect with people and to exchange something very deep, that it's a sound. For example, today we are working with a nice composer that she comes from Lithuania, and we met 20 years ago. So we have always been friends. I played her piece many times, an old piece of her that was not written for me, but became also part of my repertoire. I recorded it. Juste Janulite is her name. So, for example, she lets me completely free. She writes a very beautiful and drony and ecstatic music in a way, minimal but also very rich music. But I know that she likes how I color her music. Her scores are quite, for example, quite open and simple, let's say, but not simplistic. And I know that she loves how I can constantly work in sound in her long tones, for example. And this is a trust, no, that we have with the right roles. She's a composer, I'm a performer. But it's wonderful, you know, to have this mutual inspiration again. No, this happens, of course, it must happen when you make new music.
Absolutely.
It cannot be only, you know, instructions from the composer to the performer. So the performer is needed to make these things come alive. So the voice, it's very magic, this balance between the piece, the language of the composer and the performer, you know. So on one hand, I think that I very highly like the musicians that change according to what they play. You know, I feel about learning many languages as many pieces I play. You know, so if I play a composer, I want to speak that language, and if I play another composer, I want to speak the language. But of course, it's always my voice to speak those languages. So it's this balance is very, very important. So on one way, I want to be transparent in front of the music that I play, and the music comes, you know, the composer's voice. But also I'm aware that I'm the actor that also puts the voice on this text. So
Do you like the experimental aspect also of this contemporary music? Because you were showing me before the interview your special bow, so which is something I never saw before. So can you show it?
Yes, sure.
It's
Archer motorisé.
this is a
new kind of bow.
so you can I saw that I said like this is cheating, no? You just
Finally, you don't have any problem with the bow technique anymore.
Yeah, you just
no André Navarra, no.
No, that's so fun also. It's not just the experimental. This kind of experimentation may be so much fun.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's another chance to relearn the cello. I always think that, yeah, for example, this instrument makes a sound very continuous, and it's like you can go deep into those sounds because you never change the direction of the bow. So basically it grows very much. Also harmonics.
So it is cheating.
It is cheating, but it's also a new way. So for sure, these things that I'm learning from this sound, it will come into my vocabulary of sound. Like maybe in this case is a bit strong, the connection, but maybe I will play a long sound in another piece from Shostakovich, thinking of this special quality of, you know?
Yeah.
Imagine the quartet number 8 or something, you know, and you have this crescendo that is growing in this insane way. You know, this sound memory will come. Like I always did this kind of crossing, do you say cross pollination? Yeah, you know, this thing from the bird to the flower, and you know when.
I don't know the English word.
In French, even in Italian,
pollinisation, no, pollinisation is something like this.
From one flower to the other,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
It's a bit like this with new music and old music. For me, it's one thing, you know, it's music, it's sound and languages. So for me, Beethoven, Schumann, Haydn, Sciarrino, Janulite, these are different languages in different times. So I want to learn the historic context, the grammar, the meaning, but also I bring some ideas, you know. For example, composer I mentioned before, Sciarrino, my teacher, he's working, he invented one thing in notation. So sound that comes from zero, maybe you saw that, zero, and then you have a crescendo, you know, from zero. So it means not a piano crescendo, but zero, silence, crescendo, you know. This idea is the idea that the silence is part of the music, you know. And he's very naked, so his music is very much also about this transition between silence and sound and silence. But sometimes in Beethoven is the same, you know, this feeling of empty, and then pram, so when you learn it in Sciarrino, it's easy. When you go back to Beethoven, this silence is immediately sound, you know, or resonance, or emptiness, or something that you evaluate. It's no more only the two down bows. It's also this feeling of space. So I learn a lot here, I learn a lot there. I want always to, ideally one thing should resonate in the other. Yes, this is my ideal, I would say.
And you talk about silence, but even this room, it's a little weird, the sound. Can you just tell me? Because I feel a little weirded out about how the voice, I mean, when I speak and then it just stops, right?
Yes.
There is no resonance here.
It's total dry. Yeah. I guess it's the typical kind of ideal empty sound for studio experiment. Yeah. So it's, you know, the perfect thing environment to make then electronics, because then you can create sound after. It's a kind of neutral silence, no? Yeah, we have something from the machine, but basically it's total dry. Yes, it's like not natural.
Yeah. Yes,
it doesn't feel.
Definitely. Well, in the middle of Paris, it's better if we don't have the sound of the traffic. And but there is a room in this institute that has absolutely no sound, right? But
you say anechoid?
No, yeah, the room where you cannot.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
But you cannot play cello in it.
I'm scared. I don't know.
You cannot survive more than 1 hour in it, right? But could you play cello in it, you think?
I didn't ask, but I will investigate. But this could be a bit too much for.
Yes. Already, this is weird. Well, anyway. So, wow, but this is really inspiring and so interesting, everything you share. So, I was wondering, so you worked a lot about the classical, your classical career with the quartet and also contemporary, but you were also talking about Baroque music and like earlier music. Did you also develop that in your career?
I don't have exactly time to do everything I wish, and also, I think in a way it would be nice to go deep and spend one life in this, one life in that. But also, I want to be also free as a bird. Yeah. So I never found, just to justify myself, that I never found the time to change the strings and the gut strings and the bow. But honestly, my years listening, I'm totally influenced for many years from the period instruments performances. So the real chance was when I did 2 masterclass with Anner Billesma, one of my youth heroes. He came to Firenze, and I could be there for these 2 weeks, and it was again one teacher. Okay, only 2 weeks, only maybe less, but just I remember so much from this lesson, like everything that today I can share with my students, because something that was so much the right thing in the right moment, that inspired me a lot. And so, for example, Anner Billesma was inspiration. I never went to because I think, you can change things, but for me it was more important to learn the language in a way. I try, at the end I use my cello with my string. I don't care very much about, but it's a limit. I don't suggest people to do the same. It's just, I know myself, I'm old enough to accept my weakness, but I don't experiment a lot with strings. I don't experiment a lot with instruments. I love it, but it's, I want to forget about these things, I want.
Your life is not over, so.
No, also it's really my personality, Some people find new inspiration from the new instrument, from the new string. For me, it's the music that inspires me. It's honestly, it's like, I don't say it's good or for everybody. It's just my way. And so for me, it's more the idea of the sound that inspires me a lot. But I don't change the strings. And so I did something quite radical, as one of the last recordings that should be, like I finished editing yesterday night, but should be ready for Les Ateliers du Violoncelle at least. And it's a very personal project that I had for many years in mind. So I always played new music and very old music in the same program, finding some kind of dialogue. So, there is all this repertoire from before Bach, the very first pieces for solo cello. And they were born mostly in Italy, actual Emilia-Romagna, Bologna, Parma, Ferrara, all this small area. And so Domenico Gabrielli, degli Antoni, all this music, Domenico Galli, Colombi, all this very early music. We are speaking about 1690s. And I had this, I took some of my favorite pieces, like, again, not philological because I don't do all Gabriele Ricercari, but I choose 3 that I really love. And I make this anthology, and I thought I want something contemporary to communicate, and really Sciarrino in my life was very important. Also, his aesthetic is very connected to Baroque. He's very influenced by this. A lot of ideas come from studying the Baroque. He even uses repeats or trills, or, his music is very ornamental in a way. And also some more aesthetic ideas about vanitas and a lot. But anyway, it's not so important. But what I wanted is to create this dialogue. So I had another idea, that there was this Stradivari cello from the same years of the early pieces, so 1690 or 89, that is in this Accademia Chigiana in Siena, where I collaborate a lot for many, many years. And they were very happy if I could make a project with this cello. So basically, I didn't change the strings again. I played with...
I didn't. No problem.
But the cello is from the same years.
I see.
And is a cello that can play beautiful Gabriele and Sciarrino, like I try to do.
I see.
So, for example, I did all this repertoire that normally you would never play with, with the modern instrument. But I tried, of course, to speak the language, to make ornaments, and to have a different, not different bow, but different arm,
Totally.
No, in fact, I decided that I cannot fake that I'm a Baroque philologist. I just want to change my gestures, my arm, again, to learn the language of these composers in a, not pretentious way, but to get close to the style, and also, rather change the gestures and the arm rather than to change the bow, or this is what I want to do now. But of course, still studying, learning. For example, a composer that I think I learned a lot about was Brahms. That always I played, of course, but for some reason I felt always at home with Schumann, and I love Brahms, but I don't feel as much as home. Also the string quartets, also the sonatas. For many years I felt, Fantasiestücke or Fünfstücke in Folkestone. I let it go. But with Brahms I feel a bit intimidated, by this structure and architecture, and for example, the fugue of the first sonata, this, I felt it's really square in a way. It's amazing, but it can be a bit heavy, This heaviness didn't resonate in me. Maybe there is something that shouldn't be like this, but I didn't know how to. And then I read some beautiful articles and books about Brahms' performance praxis. And there is a nice, interesting text published by Bernard Reiter. Nilda Costa, I think, is one of the Chris Brown, I think. We should check. Sorry, but anyway, it's an interesting text with a lot of texts from Brahms' time or letters by Brahms that are just gave me another idea of the language, and the style, and for example, one thing is about articulation, that apparently Brahms expects the musician to be playing a lot the articulations, he says, like in the classical times. And he says, when I see a legatura and 2 notes legatura means that the second note is short, for example. So this idea of Brahms' sound being heavy and glued to the string immediately followed. And it made so much sense to me that you have to speak a lot. And the other thing was about rubato. Another thing that inspired me was a text from a violinist who played with Brahms, and he said, yesterday we played with Mr. Brahms, maestro, and he was playing every note with a different tempo, and almost as he wanted us to be lost. It was incredibly difficult to find him and to be together. Like almost this not together was almost to make us lost. And also this made me think that today we have different aesthetic, which is okay, but also maybe very wrong. You know, this idea of Brahms old, even when you play his early music, Trio Opus 8, and fat and huge, when he was this incredibly tender and love, full of love. Maybe this love never happened in his life, but is so even in the most structural pieces, that is, of course, architecture is important. Let's take first movement of first sonata. For me today is a piece that really should be so tender and so, you know, and of course it comes from feeling, my feeling, but also it comes from studying, you know, from reading, from a cellist that I truly admire, like maybe one of my student knows, because I always quote when I want an example of a nice, great cellist. For me is Stephen Isserlis, who I'm very lucky and proud that he became a kind of friend of mine in the last years, 4 or 5 years. I had the luck to meet him through friends, and I really, I'm happy because I've been always a big fan. Because I find that for him, really this, what we said before, strong personality, but studying, always studying, and also he can be this incredibly strong presence, but also the music comes through him. So it's something that I really is very close to what I think about the right relation. And one time he said to my students that the work of a performer is also a work of a detective, you know. So the more you learn from, of course, the text, exactly details on the score, the way it was composed, the letter that the composer sent, speaking about the style and everything, you know, you don't have to make this happen like a treatise. It's not, you don't make you don't make the homeworks, but you get inspired again for something creative and beautiful and yours. But that comes from more and more knowledge, you know, this. And then it's, I think that what you will say will have a much more, will be much more defined in the final image of your interpretation. No? Because it comes from a lot of studying, not studying only the technique or learning your informations in a kind of conscious way, but it's a very open. Maybe you can learn from, you know, for example, from visual arts of the time of the composer, you know. For example, if you play Debussy sonata or Franck sonata, I was teaching Franck sonata, and of course a young student, you know, a good cellist, but where is all this atmosphere that at the same time is very religious, mystic, and also erotic in a way, you know, because it's, and when you see, for example, a lot of the art from Belgium in this time, you have all this Félicien Rops, Jean Delville. I like a lot this symbolism, and you can see really in the images this kind of mix of sensuality and spirituality, but it's very weird. And I think in Franck music is so strong. But if you don't learn from, you know, it's far away, it's from 100 years ago, but you have to get the picture, you know, maybe read the novel from that time, or read a poem from that, easier, shorter. And I think Shostakovich, I was lucky, I went to Soviet Union, a bit I understand, but from today you have to reconstruct that word, so you can see maybe images from these Soviet graphics posters, and have an idea of the shapes and the colors, and it goes to the music. It's also detective, so it's a good idea.
And so you were mentioning earlier that you were teaching. So do you have a class, a studio in a university?
Yeah, I do teach in this school where that I mentioned before, because it was very important for my formation, Fiesole Music School. So I was teaching because this strong personality teacher, Farulli, the founder of the school, one day when I was 21, he told me, next year you teach the cello in this school. And I was totally unexperienced, but I couldn't say no. And also it was a kind of prize, no? He thought that I was. And so I had this class made of young, also kids, and also like people of my age, or maybe a little older. I had no experience, but I learned a lot. Yeah, how to explain this technique if you don't, you have to understand it first, and then you can put words. Otherwise you cannot teach. Huh? So in the beginning it was really but how do I do this? And it was good for my technique also. Even today, it's good to understand what you do, because sometimes you learn more. I've never been aware of this movement that I'm doing, but sometimes I'm not conscious that I don't do it, and it's very good for, when you put words and you focus on something, then so. Okay, but so as I was 21 and I had to start teaching, and it was a bit sudden. Maybe in that moment of life, I liked it very much. The connection with the students very strong, but also I was learning and getting all this intense life, chamber music, learning composition, everything. So teaching was a bit, in this, part of the thing. But I had to quit after maybe 10 years. So it was a long, but also I felt that at one point it was not developing. I was developing as a musician, but the teaching was not. And so I had to take a break. So for many years I didn't teach, only summer classes. And 4 years ago, the former director of Fiesole Music School, that maybe for sure I think Alain Meunier.
No.
Probably he was your guest too, or
not yet.
One future. Who, I don't know, he probably remembered me from many, many years before when we met, or someone talked about me, or suggested my name. Anyway, he was, after, Geringas, Gutmann, and then there was a very fine Italian cellist friend, Giovanni Gnocchi. So this tradition of master classes in Fiesole was very good. And he had another idea: let's make a new class from Francesco Dillon and Paolo Bonomini, who is a colleague of mine, who is a great cellist in Germany. And he thought this combination could work very well. So we started during COVID 5 years ago. And it proved to be a very successful combination. So we have this huge class in Fiesole, master class. It's every year 17, 16 students. And I must say, in the beginning, in COVID times, we wanted a bit to give a sign of hope. So we included, and the level was a bit nice but mixed. And today I think we built a very, very nice class, and it's very inspiring, as I said, to try to communicate. On one side, you communicate and you remember all these things that you learned from other musicians. I constantly quote. I like to quote other musicians that told me something meaningful, and to say, this I learned from this lesson with this cellist or this musician. And then my ideas, of course, and sometimes I have some ideas become very clear. And for 2 lessons, or for 2 months, I really have this idea very clear in my interests. For example, one thing that became for me a kind of slogan is like long phrase but short articulation, in the sense that it's sometimes it's a bit mistook, like one thing and the other, like either you play all glued, but I miss the speaking. But then if you articulate and pronounce, then you still have to have a long, so the two things are not easy to make combine together, but it's so important. So and sometimes when you teach, something that you have inside, but you have to express, and you define, your interest. For example, when I was a student, I was very much focused on the bow technique. It was very much about the my teachers spoke about fingers, because I think Navarra said a lot about fingers. Then, of course, you can speak about fingers, also about, how do you say?
Wrist.
Wrist, yes, of course. So I think it's a bit the same thing, because when you say fingers, you cannot say like relaxed but never soft. It should be kind of strong, like if you think of a lizard is never falling if it's walking on the roof,
Wow.
because this kind of feeling, lizard, it's not and it's not like it's relaxed but very strong, kind of sticky almost. And this of course works, but my school was a bit, there was something a bit missing. We never speak about the arm,
Okay.
It's a lot about the bow, and a lot of subject really to make. And I think this a lot about the fingers and the wrist. And this is very crucial, to speak the note, to start to pronounce in a different way. You want a letter, or I think a lot about letters or vowels or a consonant. When I speak, I try to change a lot my attack, and to have different kind of... and so I need really a consciousness here, But I felt sometimes if I don't think and I'm in a good mood, it goes by itself. But, if sometimes in certain moments that you are not so désengagé or blah, 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 then you have to be more aware about what happens here. And in my student time, it was a bit... forgotten. It happens by itself. No, but it's also so important that the feeling by the pronunciation resonates and is developed by the gesture, the bigger gesture. And I think also for me it came more conscious by the teaching, by what I see from the students, some difficulties, and then we start to analyze a bit more, and it's good also for me, in fact. So it's always teaching, learning, it's always the process that again resonates, maybe. So the day you stop learning from the students, maybe you cannot give so much, because it means that the lesson is something alive, and the person that comes to play for you is different from the previous person and from the next. So everyone is different, and you don't want to give the same. Of course, I have some strong ideas that I will keep repeating. So if we play this Brahms, I will for sure try to make the context clear, like we speak about before, for example. But I think, in the body is different, the voice is different, the sensibility is different. Also, the psychology is different. So with some people, you have to change, If the point is, I want to develop your personality and your voice. So if I need to be a little more strong or more compassionate, or, it's totally changing every lesson, It's not you are the same teacher every time, I think. So it's a bit like chamber music. You have a flexible personality, strong but constantly a bit changing. I don't know, maybe I'm speaking and then my students will say it's not true.
I'm sure it is.
I try that. I think I find it much more stimulating and lively, than being myself the same for all the time.
You like to adjust and adapt yourself to every
I try
student.
to get I try to think, of course I want to teach some basics of how to relate to music and to, what I consider very important in almost an ethic of making art and music. And this is, of course, something that I believe and I want to share. But then trying to understand who is in front of you and what do they need in order to get better, basically to grow. And so this is different from every... I think I learned a lot really from string quartet, With every person, you speak in a little different way. You don't, some people can take a lot and you can go and he will not feel that is too much information. But with some other people, and you are always, it's never good enough sensitivity with, basically I think ideally playing together you should not speak. You should play and play and play, and you know what I mean? I think I learned this before I was speaking a lot, because I have a lot of ideas, of course. But if you can just transmit without speaking, I think you inspire. Today I try more to share with the inspiration that it's written like this, or because you shouldn't. Yeah. Also, the teaching should be inspiration. It should not be do what I say. Because do what I say, it means what is it like? I think I learned a lot from one concert I did with Claudio Abbado, the Italian conductor. He did once an orchestra, special orchestra made of chamber musicians, and nice. And I was maybe 23 or so. I came like, oh my God, I will, this incredible guru. And basically his rehearsal were just silence and let's do again, and like just teaching how to listen to each other and forget about you as a unit, as an individual, but get a bit lost together, and the listening and the expression of his face and the sensibility of his connection with sound. So in the first day I was disappointed, like, oh, I didn't learn anything. And second day was, And after 4 days the orchestra was so good, and he was more happy and more enjoying and smiling sometimes. And so something very precious came. And without saying, without you should do this and then listen to that, just something that ideally I think it's fantastic. And of course, it's a bit of an ideal thing. And also, I'm sure that even if I don't say, if we play together, you feel my presence, because for sure I have a personality if I play. And some people can find it a bit also too much, or, So, of course, it's the melange. It's always important to, also with the student. Maybe for some students, it works very well. From some other, maybe it's not the same. But you try the right way, and this is already very important. And
Well, thank you so much, Francesco.
No, thank you.
It was so interesting, and thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and your advice and your ideas. It's really inspiring. Yes, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad that we had a nice time.
Yeah. And this is wonderful. You're going to be able to also give a masterclass in Atelier du Violoncelle with the students. And maybe I'll see you. See you there.
Sure. And then Juin, if you come to the concert, I'm sure it will be a kind of different experience, I hope. I'm happy with the pieces, how they develop. So
wonderful.
I think
great.
Another adventure for me, again.
Wonderful. Well, I will leave you with your special bows and and your mics and everything. Well, thank you so much again, Francesco.
Thank you.
And so, like usual, if you have any questions or comments, si vous avez des questions, des commentaires, laissez-les sous cette vidéo. On sera ravis de vous répondre. Ciao à tous.
Ciao, au revoir.